Hey, Mr. Stan 913 here. We are on the Bewitched Historical Tour in Salem, Massachusetts. It's a 2-hour walking tour of Salem, Massachusetts, and about the witching trials and the historic area of Salem, Mass. Right now we're probably like 15 minutes into the tour, but so well, it's going really well. So she's going over the story of Hocus Pocus, where Hocus Pocus was filmed.
And if you remember to the end credit scene when all the parents come stumbling out after that long night of partying, happens right here if you want to recreate it later. Now I'm sure we've all heard Salem gets pretty wild here in October. Has anyone been here for October before? Ooh, give me one word to describe it.
We came for the 300th anniversary of the original Wishbirds.
Oh my goodness, 1992?
Yeah. All over the world.
Oh my goodness, I need to hear more about this. That is so cool. So the Witch Trials Memorial was put up in 1992 for the 300th year anniversary. I can't imagine how many different types of celebrations they had going on. And you guys were here. Did they do it in October? Here?
So she's going over the history of, you know, the weekends and in September and October how crowded it gets here in Salem, about how it gets close to 100 to 200,000 people for Halloween. There's parades and there's also bands all set up all through the town. So far this tour is really good. I highly recommend it. We booked it weeks before our trip started, but this is a really good tour. So she gave a little history of the town. Now we're going into the history of the witch trials. And you can ask questions as you go along on this tour.
I know they got the inspiration from another city that does it. There's a couple cities actually in the country that do it. They chose something that they felt was representative of their town, and they put, just artistic interpretations up all over. So I can't remember what the other two cities were and what they decided on, but because we are such a maritime city and we have so much rich trade history, the person decided to go with the masthead, yes. And they come out every summer.
So Daniel Lowen's store, they also had a church on the second floor, and the first church is where, this is where the beginning of the witch trials started. She is going over the history now of the witch trials.
There's actually a pretty good one too, inside Rockefeller's.
So we're now walking to the Bewitched or Samantha Stevens statue to talk about more about the witching here in Salem. We showed this earlier in another video. This is all the shopping area. So the tour is actually taking us through the town, and we're heading over to the Bewitched statue, which we saw earlier, like I said. And we'll hear more on this story. So far, this is a great tour. It's 2 hours long. We're now probably 25 minutes into the tour. So it's doing very well. Here's the statue as I showed earlier in the tour.
Don't worry guys, we technically have the right of way as pedestrians in Massachusetts, so the cars will kindly stop for us, but we also have some of the worst drivers in America, so we also want to be very careful.
So the reason why the statue is here is because they filmed some episodes of Bewitched here in Salem, and it started the whole tourism of the witches in Salem. Bridget Bishop was first executed, and she is haunting this area right here.
70% of those targeted were women. She's twice widowed in temporary control of this land. So if we were to go back about 330 years ago, we'd actually be surrounded by apple trees. We're standing in what once was Bridget Bishop's apple orchard. Now on top of that, she was kind of known for starting fights in town, especially with her husband. Not the way a spiritual woman's supposed to act. And cherry on top, you're going to use the witch.
So she was the first witch that was executed, killed, and she haunts this area. So we're now at the 10 Federal, and she's going to go over the old witch gaol. This is where the witches were kept. So So this is such a great tour. Now the girl Sarah is really good. She's a history major. She does this for a living. She's really good. Highly recommend getting Sarah as a tour guide.
One structure, about 2 stories high and not very large, about the size of a witch trials memorial we're going to see at the end of the tour. And prior to the trials, there were no individual cells. Jail wasn't like it is today, a place where you do time. They weren't meant for long-term stays. It's just a spot where you hang out for a moment till they give you a court date. And if they find you guilty, they're going to deal with you right on the spot, usually by some means of corporal punishment or public humiliation. Throw you in stocks, let people throw food at you, tie you to a post, have someone whip it right out of you. If you rob someone's house, they're going to take you, brand a B right in the middle of your forehead.
This was a prison for
Condos, luxury apartments.
until 1991, and this is where they housed the witches in this prison right here. But this was here till 1991.
The Boston Strangler was held there.
Boston Strangler was also held there. These are tombstones that they moved from the back of this church to the front. The bodies are actually in the back of the church, and people actually park their cars in the back of the church. They're actually over the bodies, but they moved these stones to the front of the church. This is just showing us what the stones look like in Salem. It's a summer house that overlooks gardens.
On hot summer days, they'd open up the doors, the windows to let in the ocean breeze, have tea, lunch out there to escape the heat of the big house. And I said we would talk about that murder. It happened just in this building here. So we're looking at the backside of the Gardner Pingree house. Dates to 1804. In 1830, Captain White was found dead. Huge bruise to the head, 13 stab wounds to the chest on the night of a full moon, in fact. It became a huge murder mystery, was all over the newspapers. It inspired works by Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne.
This was the original Armory building, is now the visitor center, and this arch area you see right here was where the Armory building, the entrance was. This was all lost to fire, and they built it into the visitor center. We're now continuing the tour, again, 2-hour tour. I'm going to say one more time, I highly recommend this. I highly recommend Sarah. Very good tour guide, very well into her history major, very good tour guide. Why are the trees blue?
Behind me. Like I said, all the museums in town, this is the one I would send you to. In modern day, they're this cool mix of history, art, and activism. This guy goes from town to town, city to city, paints a selection of trees blue for the sole purpose of getting people talking about them. It's actually meant to draw attention to deforestation and climate change. And I'll tell you what, it works. I can't tell you how many times I hear that question every day. Why are the trees blue? And also keep in mind, guys, this is the only museum in town where you can see actual witch trial documents on display. Not scans, not photographs, the real deal. If you get to called the Pickman House, another one of our 20 buildings from the 1600s. This one dates to the 1660s, if you can believe it. And it was recently turned into a welcome center for the cemetery we're about to see. So if you're in town for the next couple days, there's one that you can just go right inside. Keep in mind though, this and the cemetery have very limited hours. You want to get here before 4:30 at the very latest.
So we're at the Charter Street Cemetery. This is where the memorial is for the witches, to admonish them from it.
Supernatural beings. Now welcome to the Salem Witch Trials Memorial, guys. We are going to take a little stroll through. I'll talk about some of these people. It is so important for us to make them people, not just names on stones. And remember, not a single one was a witch. They were all innocent victims of this tragedy. I said that the other day, and a dude goes, "But wait a minute, where are all the witches?" There weren't any. You missed the point. Before we enter, though, did want to call your attention to the mouth of the memorial here. You'll see this granite threshold engraved in this granite, some of the final testimonies of the accused pulled right from original documents. Things that read like, "I am wholly innocent of such wickedness. I do plead not guilty. I am no," almost says witch, goes right into that wall. "I can deny it to my dying," almost says day, once again cut off. Walls on either side, not a mistake. They're meant to represent the justice system, not hearing these people cutting their lives short. And for the most part, people walk right in, don't even notice, don't look down. It's meant to represent the indifference of the population that sat back and watched everything happen.
This is Bridget Bishop, the first one to be executed. This is the memorial. You see they put down flowers for the victims.
Of course, they come back with a guilty verdict. Those people send that petition down to Boston to the governor, who overturns her conviction. So Rebecca Nurse was actually found not guilty twice. But you got to think how important it is for these judges that she dies. They're still early in the trial. On the day of his
And
execution,
over the memorial here is the cemetery. And look at how old some of these tombstones are.
onlookers search for them. Say them, authorities held them back. Now, I don't like to tell on ghost stories on my tours. You're going to be a telephone there. Salem changed over the course of 50 years, and you somehow can't find where you were looking at. This is actually the second oldest cemetery in America, established 1637. Oldest one is right in Boston, King's Chapel, 1630. And from where we stand today, you can see two judges from the Salem witch trials. Off to my right, we got this nice, neat line of stones. There's one stone, though, that looks a little out of place. It's right to the left of that path. It's got that flat top, crisp corners, looks new compared to everything else. That's because it is. That is the stone for Judge John Hathorne, the hanging judge. The reason why his old original stone is encapsulated inside that new stone, someone kicked it over a couple decades ago, snapped at the bottom. Remember, this is the hanging judge. People still hate this man even 300 years later. Does anyone want to give a guess as to what these small stones here might be? Children, good guess, good guess. I've also heard animals, babies. Someone once said women. But because this was an open burial ground, you had to mark out your spot somehow. So, you'd have a headstone and a footstone, grave bed in between. Don't dig here, someone else is buried here. And now you can't unsee it, they're everywhere. And if you look in the back, you'll see we have a bunch of crypts. So feel free to shuffle around a little bit, guys. All these crypts off to your right, these are solid with the bodies buried in the hump of earth where you see no stones. But if you look directly behind me, you're going to see two hollow crypts back there. So the crypt that's right behind me is facing long ways this way. Then you got a second one that's facing away from us, facing that tree in the back. That second one's called the Gedney tomb. Bartholomew Gedney is one of the 9 judges appointed. But prior to being a judge, he's a doctor in town. Most of the judges have no training in law. Only qualification, they're Harvard graduates. And we didn't have a lot of those in Essex County. So in 1692, you had an education, you're also getting a promotion. Buried alongside him in that crypt, his daughter Lydia Corwin. To this cemetery, you'll see we have this kind of smaller tree right in front of us, and then if you look beyond it into the back, you'll see there's a big tree trunk that's missing a limb. Can everyone see that big tree trunk missing a limb in the back there? So that big one is called the mother tree. Very significant tree to Salem and the local Wiccan community. She's believed to be the mother white oak of all the other white oaks you see before you. They live to be about 400 years old. Essex Agricultural School came in, did a core sample, dated her to be about 350. So you are actually looking at a true living witness to these Salem witch trials. She would have been standing as these victims were brought up Essex Street to their execution spot. All right, guys, we're going to hit that side.
So we're walking right out. You see the people coming out here. It's from the memorial. And this is the end of the tour.
Started. Reverend Paris's house for a family of 6 was about half this size. So again, this is definitely borderline on a mansion during this time. Such a funny dog. I feel like it's got an attitude. It's a cool attitude. Thank you for joining me. You were such an awesome group. Loved your energy along the way. A couple minutes and we are all good to go. So these trials are going to come to a very, very abrupt end when the governor finally gets involved. Governor Phipps puts his foot down because it hit a little too close to home. Does anyone remember what happens? His wife got accused, so it worked its way up the ladder. Governor Phipps spent most of these trials in what is today Maine. He was on his way home. He knew the trials were going on, but I don't think he knew just how out of hand they had gotten. When he does arrive, he's going to discover that over 100 people are still in jail. 19 people have been hanged. A man has been pressed to death. His own wife has been accused. He's going to dissolve this court that made a big mess of everything. The court he appointed in the first place, but that doesn't get rid of your charges. You still got to go through the process. This time, the accused are sent to a brand new court with a brand new jury, a jury that includes people like Rebecca Nurse's nephew, and spectral evidence no longer allowed. With all these things in place, after 20 unsuccessful tries to get a conviction, they're going to wipe everyone's accusations clean. Of course, that does not get rid of your bill for being in jail in the first place. So if you can't afford to pay your way out, you are now in debtor's prison. It'll be a long time before everyone finally walks free. And remember, the whole thing just took roughly 13 months beginning to end. Bigger picture, over 100 families destroyed. Now what do you folks think happened to the young girls after it's all said and done? You're right. Nothing. They grew up, they got married, they had children of their own. Because obviously, this is all Satan's fault. There's no way a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old have that type of malice in their heart. These girls, they were deluded by Satan, under the influence of Satan. That is something the Queen of England will say. And of course, when the Queen says something, that's the final word. That is their get-out-of-jail-free card. So why is the Queen getting involved? Everyone starts filing lawsuits. They're suing everyone. The jurors, the police officers, the accusers, everyone but the judges. Unfortunately for us, they're kind of above that in the law. I know y'all want them to get theirs. Is at this point, Queen of England really takes notice. Remember, they killed hundreds, if not thousands, of people over there for exactly the same thing. Some of the finger pointers, the accusers, they were royalty. Just trying to keep the peace, trying to not set precedent, trying to protect that treasury. She makes an executive decision, eliminates everyone's lawsuits, takes £600 and disperses it amongst the families. It's done. It's over with. She'll say it was a dark time in our history. Everyone did the very best they could. Those girls, they were deluded by Salem's trying to learn from this dark past. We're trying to teach people about what happened here so we don't continue to make the same mistakes. One thing we hold very near and dear to our heart is the energy you put out is the energy that's going to come back to you. So if you put out positive energy, you're just going to create a vacuum for positive energy to return. Put out negative energy, same thing's going to come back. Therefore, you cannot fight hate with hate. That just breeds hate. That is what happened here in Salem over 300 years ago. Of course, my new friends, the only thing that defeats hate is, go ahead and say it, 1, 2, 3. All together and happy? Love. Beautiful. I had someone yell, liquor, the other night. It was hilarious. All right, guys, that was the closing things.
Sarah is on podcast. She's going over her podcast that she has. It's called Salem the Podcast, so look it up.
Our episode on her life, there is so much more to these stories than we can fit in one tour. All right, guys, this is where we part ways. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Yep.
If you enjoyed the tour and you want to do
It was a great tour.
more payment fun, I won't say no. But I always like to tell people best tips.
If it's your first time watching, welcome. Please don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to receive future notifications, hit the bell. If you'd like to give this video a thumbs up, please do. This is Mr. Stan 913.
Sorry for yelling at you, George.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.